Okay, so this is Steve Melendrez, sculptor, model maker, illustrator, scientific illustrator, designer, and it goes on. I was working for the Natural History Museum in Los Angeles. Now, I have to do that because I'm figuring some people, this may be the first video they see, so they don't know who's I am and anything. And there are videos that explain a little bit more about my life and times. I'm an educator now, taught all different levels from college to kindergarten, and each one of them had their own challenges. Right now, I'm a middle school teacher, and the way I teach is to bring history, science, biology, math, and interactions with my students that make the class fun. Now, I never thought I was going to be a teacher. That was through a variety of events that I thought I had control of, but obviously I didn't. But that aside, so I'm going to be teaching this lesson of how to draw or paint cactus. Now, there's 800 or 900 species of cactus, and there's probably more, because they're always finding new species and subspecies and things like that. But there is a lot. So I'm going to give the techniques of how I would do it. Now, I'm going to go through different levels, switching back and forth, because I'm not sure who I'm teaching right now. If it's young people, adults, professional artists, so that their thing may range from a different variety of people. So when I'm explaining things, if it doesn't mean anything to you or it's not relevant, don't worry, just spin through it. So I'm just going to show examples of how things just happen, the surroundings influence my work. The cactus is one of those. It's such an amazing plant. It's so tenacious for survival. It lives in extreme conditions, in terrain that nothing else can survive, in sandy soils, without water, and still thrives. Anyway, so this is just give you a little introduction with that. Anyway, so the only thing I would say, because I do want to teach young people also, because that's what I'm doing. I retired this year, but I'm still a teacher by heart. So there are some videos that I really enjoy, and I break it down into a few sections. One of them is the watercolor demonstrations and video post-its for my daughter. So it's kind of a visual diary of my life and my time at the museum. Some of the stories are kind of funny. So the only thing I would say is if you know any young people that are interested in art or museum or science and biology, this is kind of probably be a good way, because I'll take things at a level so that people can understand it in a simple form, and then some that want to go in more detail. Now, like I said in other videos, I don't have anything against the loose type painting of watercolors. Some of them are very beautiful, and and people like that style, and that's fine. I'm kind of tending to go in the more scientific direction or adding more detail. And the reason I'm doing this is for those people that have only know the simple way. So in other words, it's a stroke for this, a stroke for that, blending. And like I use that same technique for a lot of my paintings also, but I do go, depending on the subject, I do go into more detail. And this is one of those detail things that will go further in the detail of the cactus I'm doing. It's going to be a beaver tail. And I'm going to talk through it like I would be explaining to my students, so forgive me of that. If you don't you know, like that kind of stuff, all you have to do is turn down this volume and you can see the instructions. Anyway, I'm going to stop it right there. So this is a beaver tail cactus. I'm going to be doing a demonstration. I'll read out the colors of what I'm going to be using. Mainly kind of a green oxide and ochres. And I'm going to try to show as much as I can. So it's just a quick drawing, and this is out of watercolor pencils because I like them because they disappear. So you can see the colors kind of matching what I have there. And I'm just blocking things in right now. And I know it's going to have an effect with these right here. But I can easily, after I get what I want, come back and go over these to bring them back to life. I'm just doing this as a demonstration. So I'm just kind of looking for little patterns right now. This is the green oxide. So, like I said, I'm just kind of laying down the color. Now, what I'm doing a demonstration, I'm trying to do as much as I can do within a short amount of time. So I'm not gonna, or I can't show everything from start to finish. It's just not possible. But what I'll try to do is just do maybe 1/2 of the painting a little bit more detailed than the other, so you can get kind of an idea. Like I said, this will probably blend out the spikes. Now I'm going to explain different things as I'm painting, because I'm kind of treating this as a project for my students. So I would be explaining the techniques, and I would be explaining a few things that they wouldn't get in an art class, because that's just the way I teach. Now, it doesn't matter if I have some dark and light spots in here. That doesn't really have an effect on things. Nature is random. I will try to darken some areas in it, but you can see on these little things, I have some shadows in here, and I would probably put shadows underneath here. And what I'm going to do is kind of do one part of the flower. So while I'm letting this dry a little bit, I'm going to another area. And remember, I'm going a little bit fast, mainly because the time element. And I just want to get most of this instruction in there. So you can see the techniques I'm using, and they'll vary. But 90% of the stuff I do is the same techniques. And I'm doing that technique, what I call is 20 cups of coffee. So it's kind of like really, my hand is like has a mind of its own, and it's doing these jagged little things and blending and adding stuff in here, and just kind of having that freedom. This is the loose part of painting that I spoke of. And some people, just like what happens here and then stop and call it a day. That's not the way I paint. But, like I said, people enjoy that fast, loose, can't or don't know what's going to happen, which is kind of exciting because it just appears. And like I've explained in my other videos, this is kind of one of those things where they take a life of their own, and that's the beauty of watercolor. Sometimes things happen and you have no control, and they just work out. It's as long as you just don't get too intense and just kind of start thinking about it too much. I kind of go in like in a Zen thing. You see this blend into this part in here. And that will help with some of the techniques. I'm going to come back in here. Now this is a much darker wash. And this is actually dry brush in here. And cactus, like I said, there's so many different species that it's impossible to get all the colors because they do vary in colors and the flowers vary. Now, like I said, I'm going to explain, like your students in my class, as I would explain to them while we're working. Now, there's going to be a little highlight on this side here. So I would just kind of come in here and blend. Now, you may not see what's happening in here, but I'm going to start pulling color out. And this is the way I would build up my colors. Now, I put in many, many layers. So now I'm coming back in there. It's kind of like a wet on wet. So that helps with the blending and the highlight. I'll come back in here after it's dried a little bit and actually come in there and pull out some little areas for the highlights. Now, I'm going to say, there's kind of a little drawing that's just basic drawing underneath that is and this is the part about layering that I didn't know about, and over many years kind of was able to do this. And you can see it's just a matter of putting down the color and blending, getting the foundation. I'll be adding different types of green, a sap green, and all those variety of greens gives this a little bit more life. This is kind of a sap green coming in, and I don't know if you can see the difference, but it's just changing the outcome. Now I'm going to switch to flower. And what I said in some of my other videos, keep your water clean. And now I'm going to explain a little bit about the flower itself. Now, these are amazing. Oh, nature in itself is just amazing. It just fascinates me, you know, what is going on there. So I just kind of blocked in some colors. Oops. Let me see if I can go a little closer so you can give you an idea what's going on. And you can see that part and kind of go back out. Now I'm going to come in here with a smaller brush, which is what I feel comfortable working with. Now, I don't know if during the process, sometimes these things get cut off. So I'm going to try to go a little closer on some of these areas and try to keep it centered. Again, I'm using that 20 coffee technique. And like I explained in some other videos, when you start thinking about it too much, you start getting stiff. And you don't really want to do that. You want to keep your movement just with like almost in a Zen type painting thing. And it's just a matter with watercolors for doing the detail that I like doing. Now, like I said, it doesn't mean, you know, some people just like that simple, you know, fast stroke, one stroke artwork. And like I said, that's what people, or a lot of people, are teaching. And I don't know if that's teaching because, you know, that's their style, which is more than likely their style. But you can see I'm pulling out the color right now, and you can see that nice little blend of highlights. Sometimes I need to pull a highlight for sunlight, and that is just going in there, and you can see it getting lighter. Anyway, so I'm going to come in here in the bottom because it's a little bit darker here. You see, when I'm seeing this little dot here, I'm seeing that as a water drop. That could happen if I wanted to do that. That was just a mistake, like this one here. Now, I spend hours on some of my drawings, going over, letting them rest, thinking about them, looking at them, coming back in, looking for little things that I've overlooked, want to improve on. And that's just the way I paint. And you can see what I'm doing here. It should be making sense to you, the technique. And like I said, it's about putting the color down, pulling out. So maybe I want to go a little bit lighter here. So I'm just using a dry brush and a little bit of a damp brush. And then just blend. Coming in here, pulling out the color, blend. Oh, I don't think you can see that part. Hang on. Again, it's just putting down the color and blending. And I apologize because, like I said on a previous video, I may make it look a little easier than it is. And I explain that in another video how that happens. Now I may go a little darker here. I may use an umber along with the chromium oxide. Now, when I get the layers in there, there's going to be multiple layers to get to this point. And then because the beaver tail have this kind of almost like a whitish green on there. That will happen after everything is totally dry and I've gone through all the layers. I'll come in with a dry brush of white and just kind of blend it in so that it gets more of this look. And I'm going to just do some shadows in here. These will be blended. Now I'm going to just talk about some of the cactus thing like I would be talking to my students. Now, this is what's so fascinating with cactus. If you have, depending on the species, the ones with the leaves, you could tear off one of those leaves and you just can't plant it. You got to wait a little bit. You got to let it dry. So once it dries, a couple of days, you put it on a bed of sand and terrain that would be somewhat, I guess, cactus area type terrain, and you just kind of lay them in there on just a bed of sand and just kind of wait for them to kind of adjust to their environment, I guess you could say. And over time, they will actually grow little roots in their area. Now I'm just kind of giving kind of an indication of where the spikes would go. And like I said, I'm going to go into a lot more detail into this. And like I said, I can't really show the whole thing because it would just take too long and it would just... But if I can show you how I would do one, that one would be kind of the foundation for how I would do the other ones. I don't think you can see that. Okay, move it up. So I'm just working on this little thing right here. And that's where the spike would go. And that's kind of an umber. And you can see it has different type of things in there and colors, and there's some white in there. Kind of occasionally they do get a disease of mite. And I'm just dabbing that in there. Looking for little things now that would make sense to me. And I'm going into kind of a Van Dyke brown. And I'm looking for just little things that kind of, and this is that random things, like